Hey guys, Steve from Cantu Comics here. Today is a pretty special episode. I'm going to go over what to look for in comic books that you will want to press. So I'll kind of show you what to look out for, like what defects that is pressable, because there's a lot that just won't come out in a press, especially if it breaks color. All right, guys. So you went through your garage, you found some childhood comics, and you're like, holy crap, like that thing's worth a lot of money now. But you noticed, you read it quite a bit. You loved it. For sure you read it at least like 10, 11 times. So should I even press it? Is it worth it? So let's jump right in. So the first defect that I'm gonna go over is bends. So bend is basically any like crease or like a bend, anything in the book that does not break color. So if it does break color, the press, it's gonna make it flat, but that's the part where the ink is like broken and gone and it's just white underneath. You can't get that out. But if you've got something right here, I got a Canto #1. So I'm gonna show you in the B-roll. It's really, really, really hard to see. That's what was notorious with Canto #1, that there was a ton of them that had these little like pressing, like kind of like from the printing press, it came out like a little creased. And most of them did not break color. And this one also didn't break color. And if you are very familiar with this comic book, this book in a 9.8 is crazy expensive, like more expensive than like Silver Age books that I've been showing to my channel. So I think it's like $1,000 or something now if it's a 9.8. So this definitely is a candidate for that. And another thing to kind of point out is that this is signed here. It isn't Sharpie, so that's actually okay to press. So nothing's really going to happen to that. So on my B-roll, I've been showing you the actual crease. It's pretty bad, but it's definitely pressable. So I have another example as well. This book has a lot of color breaks, but I bought this Wolverine #3 from his limited series, and I got it dirt cheap. Right here was $2 because it was just manhandled. Like, look at this thing here on the edge. Like, some kid really, really loved it. He's like, or it was a jealous like brother or something. They're like, my turn, and they just crunch the edge of it. I know that stuff happens, but that's why I got it for $2. And I have another, like a nicer copy, because especially a black book, these things are really, really hard to keep nice. But you can see here on all these bends, most of that stuff will come out, except for anywhere that you see that ink cracked on there, that will not press out. Everything else though, this will get super flat. So that's to look out for with bends. So the next big one to look out for is called a corner crunch. So basically what happens is that one of the corners of your book had some impact on it. So maybe you were holding on to it and it slipped, it just like slipped down, hit like the cabinet or something right below, and it hit right on the edge. And sometimes that happens, it'll just kind of crunch the corner a little bit. But most of the time it doesn't break the color. But it's obviously, you're looking at it, you're like, oh man, that sucks. Like it's all this little crunchy bend in the corner. So I have a couple books here that show a pretty good example. So I'll definitely get in with the B-roll and show you up close. But this Transformers #1, which is a very, very nice book. And this copy, aside from this corner crunch, there's a few little minor defects to it, but this corner crunch can easily be pressed out. So yeah, right here, you just see there's some impact down here by the Spider-Man head. So right there, that'll definitely come out. And luckily, there was no ink already on that part. So you could just really see you can see the crease, and that'll just come right out. And the other book is, the other example here is Uncanny X-Men #221, which features the first appearance of Mr. Sinister. So of course, this is definitely a candidate to press, because he's getting really hot now with, Disney acquiring X-Men. He's definitely going to appear. So up here in the top right corner, there's some impact. And luckily, it does not break color. So this guy right here, we'll see after it presses. It's very, very fine on there. I think most of that's going to flatten out, but there may still be a little bit of traces of some color loss. But overall, it's going to make this book look amazing, because even up top here, I got some little minor creases. So this book can definitely benefit from a press, especially these key books when they come out. They definitely need a press. So the next defect to be on the lookout for is called finger bends. So this is a pretty major book here. So this is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, second print. And I did feature this book in a previous episode that has quite a bit of views compared to my other videos on this channel. But if you want to check it out, I've linked it up top so you can see more features of this book and all the signatures and the history and everything about it. But obviously finger bends, which basically result in not really manhandling, but a book that was well read, but still kind of taken care of, not to the point where it's breaking color. But this book definitely was read a lot. So there is some color breaking, spots here and there. But all these little finger bends, like you could just see just little tiny little bends where you can just see where their finger was. They grabbed it. The back of the book I know has quite a bit of them, but this front cover definitely has a lot. So all this stuff will just come right out. And this cover, it is signed here by Kevin Eastman. So it is in Sharpie, so that, again, I think I mentioned it on the Canto, it's okay to press with Sharpie. But if it's not a Sharpie, if it's one of those more like water-based Prismacolor marker, yeah, that's just gonna be, it's gonna get all screwed up. If it's a ballpoint pen, you should be okay as well. So, but definitely Sharpies, you're good. So this one, I'm not worried about pressing with the signature here. But yeah, the finger bends, it's a pretty common defect to find in books that you want to press. So the next thing to look out for, and I've mentioned it before in the past, actually is about the spine, which is a very, very important part of the book. So non-color breaking spine tick marks. So this book right here, G.I. Joe #1, this is a pretty desirable book, and it is also autographed here by Larry Hannah. So I will definitely do a future episode talking about the story about getting a signature and meeting this character. He's very interesting. But aside from that, this book right now, it's very, very desirable. And the only really bad things of my copy here is the spine. So there are a couple little notches here that do break color a little bit, but a lot of this stuff is going to get pressed out. So definitely on my B-roll, you're going to see all the detail, all those little, where the light is shining, and you can just see where the bend, where the actual center point of the bend, all that stuff is going to come out, and all that will be left. If there is a little color breaking point, that's all that's going to be left. So I can definitely go up at least 1 grade, unless this is already going to grade pretty high, which possibly can. But I mean, we'll see. Hopefully at least an 8.5. I would definitely like to be in the 9s, so hopefully a press will push this into the 9s. So that's definitely very important, is the spine. All right, so this next one, it's pretty obvious when you see it, but it's called ripples. So it's basically when moisture is introduced into your book. And I have a pretty good example here, and I took it out of the plastic for you because it'll be really hard to see with the glare. But this is the Man-Thing #1, and I got this cheap because it had the ripples. But aside from that, there's no stains or anything. So it's, it's pretty gnarly. The inside, it's brown, of course, because it is a pretty old book. But definitely you could probably see here in some of the light, this thing is just tore up. And in my B-roll, you can really, really see the ripples. This thing will benefit significantly with the press. And, for a $5 investment, yeah, I think it's worth it. Especially, Swamp Thing with DC is obviously, he's the character to go. But, Man-Thing is Marvel's answer to him. And I wouldn't put it against them to release a movie or a TV show at least, featuring Man-Thing. So very, very, very nice book, as long as I can get these ripples out. But yeah, water it's pretty bad on these books, and you can see why. All right, guys, so the next one to look out for is called a spine roll. And I featured this book in a previous episode, unless I haven't released it yet. I did just shoot 4 episodes back to back, so in case you've noticed, I'm wearing the same shirt. So depending, we'll see where this episode releases, but you will see this again if I haven't done my Nick Fury keys yet. So this is Strange Tales number 140. So there's a spine roll going on. So on this edge here, you can see right here, it kind of bends in and then curves out a little bit. So this was This happens when the person is reading the book and then they're just pulling the page behind and just pinching it with their fingers, just like, really, really engrossed in the book. So instead of just opening it up like a book, like a traditional book, they were bending it back and it stresses it. So you get this little spine roll. So it can go either way, but this is definitely pressable. This will come out no problem. And especially because of this, there was no real spine damage aside from a couple little things, but that has nothing to do with the spine roll. But this is definitely very, very pressable, and it'll make this book a lot more valuable. So the last thing to look out for in these defects is called stacking bends. So this is very, very similar to the spine roll, but it's just much more prominent. So what actually happens with this is that these books were just stacked up vertically. Like, it's sitting here, you got more books on top, and the pressure, or even if it's in a long box upright, if there's too many books in there and they're not all perfectly, lined up and aligned, this happens. So you have like a book pressing up, right up on this edge, and you got it in there for years. You're gonna get this damage here. But much like the spine roll, this is very, very easy to press. So it's just more harsher, but this is something that is easily pressable. And it's very, when you look at it, you're like, whoa, crap. Like, I would not send this to grade as is. Like, they're just gonna just slap it with like a 2.0 or something. But this is The Many Ghosts of Dr. Graves. So it's not a very significant book, but this is pretty old. This is, I believe, like early Silver Age. So not a bad book, but this is definitely something to press out, and it will become a much, much nicer book. So that about wraps up my episode about pressing. So basically this is a part 1 introducing you to what to look out for in pressing a book. And the other thing that I actually didn't really go over that much is, should you even press that book? So obviously, most of these books that I showed you are pretty prominent keys, or they're at least like very old and they're valuable. So if you have a book and it's not really worth much, unless you're bored or something and you have your own press, go ahead. But yeah, you have to kind of weigh that option as well. Like, is this even worth spending this extra time and effort, or even sending it to a service to press? So definitely that's another thing to think of when you're determining, do I want to press this book or not? So if you're not already subscribed to Cantu Comics, I definitely encourage you to hit the bell down there and be informed on the next time I drop an episode, because if you've made it this far, I'm pretty sure you like my content. So with that, this is Steve from Cantu Comics, signing off.